Okay, welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. We have a Procore sponsored episode with a special guest today. So excited to introduce Corey Hirsch. Many of you will know Corey from his NHL days. So Corey's a public speaker, NHL broadcaster, Olympic silver medalist, NHL goaltender, and NHL coach advocate for mental health and wellness. Corey's been doing many speaking engagements on behalf of the Independent Contractors and Business Association throughout British Columbia, which is where he's tuning in from in Vancouver. And so we'll be drawing the thread today on the topic of mental health. And Corey's got a story to tell on that front. So yeah, mental health and construction. It's it's one of those things. We have a culture where I think it's probably not talked about enough, and so that's the main purpose of today. So Corey, thank you so much. It's an honor to get the chance to speak with you today. We're excited.
Thank you for having me on. And it's when I started speaking a few years back, I didn't really know what kind of niche I would fall into. And working with ICBA, I've spoken. God, I mean, we've spoken probably to 15,000 construction workers in BC, Alberta. Made one trip to the Maritimes. Was in Halifax, talked to Merit, and it's been incredible. And I guess the reason it's been so good is it's construction. It's almost like a locker room, right? Like it's guys hanging out together. It's there's the masculinity part of it, but I mean there's females in construction we don't want to forget about, because they can struggle and feel that they have to be tougher than they need to be as well. But it's very similar in the sense that, like I said, it's like a locker room, right? It's talking to your buddies and your boys, and you're hanging out, and you're except for with construction, you're also doing a pretty dangerous job, right? I mean, so it's where it's fallen into is we've just talked to a lot of people, and just to not be afraid to get the help that you need. It's your buddies are more apt to be proud of you if you get the help than to make fun of you, right? But we have this, as guys, we have this thing where we're like, I don't want my buddies to make fun of me, or I don't, what are my buddies going to think? Who care? Your buddies are going to be proud of you and happy that you helped yourself. And if they're not, well, then they're not your people. So that's kind of the message that we've tried to come across. It's been really good.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that you kind of as you started your public speaking, after your career, that's kind of the arena that you ended up in. There's a lot of similarities in the culture between in construction and the NHL. It's fast paced and demanding work. It's kind of a tough guy mentality, and you have to be tough, to succeed. It's competitive, all the same, a lot of the same elements. So it's definitely a lot of similarities, like you said. And if I'm not mistaken, I think your dad was a plumber too. So there's kind of a few different ways in which this kind of fits, or this kind of, it's kind of destined to be what you're doing at this point.
Grew up in construction, oil and gas, Calgary. I mean, that's all my buddies' dads were oil, and my dad was a plumber. I worked with him for 2 months. He made me just cut his pipe for 2 months. That's all he let me do. It was the worst job I've ever had. I think he probably did that on purpose so that I would go into hockey, and I'd appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Made me do all the grunt work. Yeah.
Yeah, shock you.
But no, yeah, you said something too that's interesting. Yeah, and yeah, you do have to be tough. It's a tough, in these you do have to be tough. But but who are you away from the job, right? That's going to allow you to do your job. It's funny, we haven't been able to separate personal and professional life. We try to, but people are like, well, if I get help in my personal life, what are people going to think of me at work, and blah blah blah. Who cares? You're going to be a better person to work with. They're going to be happy, right? Like, and your jobs are dangerous. So this is another thing we talk about too, is that as somebody on the job, whether you're a foreman or whether you're just another employee working with another guy, that guy's got to be on top of his stuff too, or jobs can get dangerous, right? I mean, like construction, like oil and gas, so that's why we have to be there for each other, right? And if I'm going to make fun or shame someone into not getting help, that doesn't help me at work. That makes my job more dangerous. If this guy's, having some depression struggles or struggles at home, it actually is going to affect me at work, right? If I have to work with this person. So, you know, even from that standpoint, to get help makes sense. And even from a human standpoint, like it just, life is so much better that the help is available. Like suffering in silence now is it's ridiculous. Why? You don't have to, and I did for 3-4 years when I was playing hockey. I didn't tell anybody anything. I struggled. My play struggled, and it affected my relationships with my teammates. Right. So we're not in that stage anymore. Like, you can get help, and if someone, if you don't feel comfortable around someone because you went and got help, like I said, well, then they ain't your people, because there's nothing wrong with getting help and being better for everybody around you. And like you had said, yeah, I grew up in construction. I grew up in oil and gas. And it is a lot like a locker room. It really is. We have the opportunity to help somebody, and if that's your buddy or your best friend, damn straight, let's help them. Let's help them have a better life.
Yeah, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you know of this stat too, or the suicide rate among construction workers is 5 times higher than the Canadian national average, right? I mean, I think that's still somewhat accurate today, whether that was from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever. Yeah, it's sad, right? It affects so many people. I think about too, like we were talking about, you have to be tough and to succeed, and that's there, but at the same time, like, just to be able to have both sides, right? Like, this vulnerability. I think, like you said too, like, our industry, yes, there's plenty of females, and we're better for it, but still a male-dominated industry, right? There's 70 to 90% males, and it's a dignity thing. I think it's if there's an internal voice that everyone has, like. I've got to man up, and yeah, that's true sometimes. A lot of times it is true, but then, like, there's other things where, like, I think you used the analogy in some of your past interviews where, like, if you have a broken leg, it has to heal, right? If you have something that's wrong mentally, like, you can't just keep saying man up, push through it, and eventually, like, and this will tie into your story. Can you kind of share the not the short version, but just a bit of your story, and what you've dealt with mental health and OCD and your NHL career, and just the pressures and having to struggle with that without even knowing and not being diagnosed, and then being able to make sense of some of the struggles you would have had in silence and that sort of thing. Because most of our listeners would be based in Atlantic Canada, some central, and even we have people tuning in the Western Canada. I mean, a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of our audience is male dominated. So this is a great chance over the airwaves just to for people to, there'll be people on construction sites listening to you right now, right, when this does drop. So yeah, please, the floor is yours.
I mean, I'll make it as short as quickly as I can. I mean, I had an Olympic silver medal. I had just drank out of the Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers, and I was suicidal. Right? I mean, I struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder. I didn't know what was going on at the time. I mean, this is a long time ago now. I mean, this is back in the early 90s. But I always just felt like I couldn't tell anybody or talk to anybody. And I was, if I did, I was going to be labeled as crazy or buried in them, never ever get a chance to play in the NHL. So I didn't tell anybody. And, it took its toll. Eventually, I lost 30 pounds. I couldn't eat, and it took me down. It took away a very promising NHL career for me. And I still ended up playing 100 games, over 100 in the National Hockey League, but it could have been a lot more had I been able to get the help and felt comfortable enough to get the help. Been educated when I was younger. Hey, this is something that happens. Go see a doctor, blah, blah, blah. But instead, we have the stigma. We have the stigma of our bodies. And, heaven forbid something mentally happens to you, you're labeled as weak, or there's something wrong with you. How can I go and break my leg or something, and that's seen as okay, but something in my brain breaks, which I have zero control over, which I never asked for, and all of a sudden it's completely different, right? so long story short is I suffered for 3 or 4 years in silence until basically I was to the point where it was either go get help or take my own life, right? Because I couldn't live the way I was living anymore, basically hiding and not eating and not training and basically just really struggling and suffering from panic attacks. So finally, when I did get help, I reached out to get help. I got trainer, but it was 3, 4 years down the road, right? Whereas if I could have gotten help right away, I went to the doctor, knowing what it was, got help right away, I'd have a lot longer NHL career and a lot better chance at a longer NHL career. Instead, uh, after 3, 4 years, I struggled, lots of destruction behind me in relationships, just trying to hide having a mental health issue. And that's a full-time job in itself. And it ended up, I ended up bouncing around the minors the rest of my career, right? This the early 90s, but it doesn't have to be like that anymore. It doesn't have to be like this. And I say this, I did actually make an attempt at my own life at one point. And I say this, I say, to anybody out there listening, if I was successful at that, do you think my hockey buddies would have said, yeah, what a man, he sucked it up, he went out like a man, he didn't tell anybody, he didn't talk to anybody? No, they'd be like, why didn't he tell me? We could have gotten him help. Why didn't we go get him help? Right. But we're always so afraid that what our buddies are going to think or what someone else is going to think. um, all that matters is that you're healthy and that you can be a good friend and a good parent and a good spouse or whatever. But when you have mental health issues, it's hard to be any of those. And if you get the help, it gets better. I am living proof of that, right? I mean, I was suicidal at one point. I almost took my own life. Today, I live a great life. I'm speaking. I've coached in the NHL. I've broadcast in the NHL. I've played in the NHL. I've written a book. Like, go get the help. Life gets a lot better. I promise you. It's work, but it gets a lot better.
Thanks so much. I know this is something you do all the time, but for your vulnerability and just being so open with your story, there's people out there right now that are struggling, and it helps them. It gives them the courage, to see somebody who's successful, who's kind of a man's man, so to speak, and this is something that people deal with, And do you think now, having gone through that, I mean, your NHL career, right? So you were with the Kamloops Blazers and won Memorial Cup in '92, and then off the NHL with the Rangers, still your favorite team. So Stanley Cup there. So this is in the mid '90s that you're kind of struggling with this battle. Would you say, and now with all the advocate work that you do, and like, how much progress have we made as far as eliminating the stigma? I mean, you do, Bell Let's Talk, mental health associations all over. Obviously, there's a lot of people advocating for it now. Like, is someone in your shoes now, 30 years later, their chances of coming forward, getting the help they need sooner is better, certainly. I'm hoping, I'm assuming, but how much progress do you feel has been made? And obviously, like anything, it's a transition. But are you happy sort of with what you see happening in professional sports and maybe construction?
I'm happy with what I see from society as far as people. We're making it acceptable. People are asking to get the help. More apt to, anyways. It's better that way. Still, though, we still have, a lot of people don't know where to go and all that. Where I'm not happy is I feel as though, as a society, government wise, we haven't really done much to, what's the answer, right? Like, we have Hastings in here in Vancouver that's homeless and a lot of addiction issues, and it's heartbreaking, right? And we still don't have an answer for things like that, and we still don't have enough resources. And so I'm encouraging people out there to go into school, go into psychology, psychiatry. We need more doctors, we need more counselors, we need more people, we need more help, for people to be able to pay for it. Finances is an issue, but the good news too is those that you're usually typically HR, or if you're unionized or whatever, there are programs now available, and just get in touch with them. And if you're not comfortable getting in touch with your HR or talking about anybody, well, the first place you go is your doctor, right? Your doctor's seen all of it, right? Your doctor's not going to look at you and with, like, you have three heads if you go and say, you're suffering from whatever. They've seen and heard it all. way
Yeah.
worse than what you can probably explain to them. So, go to your doctor, go get the help. I think we're in a much better place now where, people are asking for help, but they don't know where to go, right? So that's the next step. We need to bridge that gap where, well, where do I go? I need help. Where do I go? Well, first place typically is your family doctor. They'll be able to refer you to psychologist, psychiatrist, or if you have a buddy. That's what's so important about sharing your own story, right? Is that, say someone's struggling with something similar to what I'm struggling with, they know they can come to me and I can hopefully lead them in the right direction, right? That's why it's so important that we talk and we share our stories, because when you share your story, it actually helps someone else open up, right? And there's no shame in having gone to a treatment facility or for alcohol or drugs or whatever. And then by opening up and telling your own story, well, that's how we're going to help people. That's how we're going to make change, by making it okay, to ask, because it's ridiculous to think that it's not okay to ask. Like, my brain is supposed to function perfectly. Are you kidding me? Scientists, we only understand like 5 to 10%. There's 9% of the brain we don't even understand. It's so complex and complicated, but we expect everyone's brain to work perfectly. That makes zero sense to me, right? It doesn't. We all have struggles. We all have a story. Go get the help, man. There's a better life out there.
I was reading through the Independent Contractors Business Association, ICBA, and their website, and a few of their articles. Top 3 drugs requested by members, which would be specific to the construction industry, was depression, anxiety, and sleep disorder. That was what these medications were given for, and I think about specifically, like, there is a lot of people that are dealing with these, and it could be different levels, like for different people, and everybody's unique, right? And everybody's going to get help in a unique way. Certain medications, for example, might work for some people and not others, and so it's kind of a trial and error. But what you're saying, and what's true, I guess, is to start that journey is like just having those conversations, right? Because first you have to admit, like, that, yeah, there's a problem here, and I just need to talk about it to somebody, and then that's kind of like the first step, right, of the journey of 1,000 miles, right, to start to, and I guess that's really what it comes down to, is having those conversations, right? I mean, they're so powerful. I mean, look, what we're doing here is it's simple. It's just, we're just a media company that wants to have meaningful conversations. Right? I couldn't think of a better guest, and have other people just be part of the conversation. So it's there's a lot of power in words, right? I mean, just speaking about it may even be half the battle, right? And then the rest is going to be unique to everyone's journey, and maybe counseling, and maybe some things, childhood stuff, and stuff that certain people have been through, and there's all kinds of different things that are going to be so unique, but just opening the door with the conversation. And how can people in the industry, say, if they're business owners or contractors, or there's this tough guy mentality that in some ways you need to have, and there's good parts of that, and it gets the job done, but how can some leaders maybe who aren't comfortable maybe with, it's hard to have hard conversations anyway. It's always going to be a battle. But what do you think, like, you could speak to on, like, leaders even on the job site, whether they may be foremen or site supers, or like you said, guys in the locker rooms, just other carpenters and plumbers, electricians that are on the site, or business owners, like, we've had CEOs on the show of big Atlantic Canadian-based companies, and they're admitting, like, hey, I struggle with this too. I mean, I'm here as far as the hierarchy is, and the decision making and all that. Like, I'm here as a CEO, and I'm you're on top, but hey, like, they struggle with the same thing that it's kind of, there's an equal playing ground there that we're all on, right? We're all connected that way.
I'll put it this way, and I'm going to put it very bluntly about the tough guy mentality, right? And that's fine. There's a time and a place, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's like a proven about it.
there was a time and a place on the ice where I had to be a little tougher, tough guy. But who are you when you're off the ice, right? Who are you? And I'll put it bluntly: the suicide rates of construction is 5 times the national average, 5 times, right? So do you want to be a tough guy and possibly have a suicide on your where inside your company or whatever, because you wanted to have a tough guy mentality, and that that person doesn't feel comfortable getting help or whatever? Or do you want to help people and let's put a dent in these numbers, right? Because I've had a suicide in my life. I had a girlfriend that took her own life, and I'll tell you what, it's the worst thing that can ever happen to anybody. It dropped me to my knees, right? And I say this in my talks: if you've ever gotten that phone call, it is absolutely the most horrific phone call you can ever get. And if someone out there is listening and you've got it, you know what I'm talking about it. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, because it is awful. So let's drop the tough guy bullshit, because 3 in 4 suicides are male right now. They're 75%, right? And is something like that possible to happen in your life? I hope not. I hope it doesn't, but it does, and it happens way too often in the construction industry. So what do you want to be? Do you want to be a tough guy that encourages other people to or pushes people down that to not talk about their stuff, or do you want to possibly save a life? I mean, right? That's up to you as a male, right? And there's a time and a place. So what I say to CEOs and companies and workers and foremen and all that: have an open door policy, have an open door policy, because it affects everybody. And construction jobs are dangerous. So if you have one worker that's not on top of his shit, right, someone else can get hurt. So, by pushing people down and not encouraging them and saying that you're not a man or whatever, and I hope people don't do this anymore, you're actually encouraging a safety issue, right? Like you're not doing your job in that sense, which is to make the workplace safe. So if you want to make the workplace safe, be open for someone able to talk to you, can come to you with their problems, so that we can get them help and they can get back to work and be, safe for everybody. And that's how we're going to change this right now.
Do you think some of it, I mean, this is kind of a direct, blunt question, but you think some of it, say in your experience in the NHL and professional sports, maybe the same in construction, you think some of the mental health or a lot of the mental health issues comes from bullying? In some regard, I mean, I'm not saying that it all does, or it's tough. It's just, I'm not making a blunt statement that it does. There's a lot of mistreatment in the workplace. There's a lot of mistreatment in professional sports. I mean, you hear stories. You hear the horror stories all the time. People don't always speak up, right? People don't always speak up. It's authority. It's, hey, I got a career on the line here. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. Like, sometimes it comes from, mismanagement or poor leadership. You want to win a Stanley Cup. Better keep our mouth shut. Or, hey, we got to get this job done, and I got bills to pay. I got kids at home. I'm not going to say anything. Some of it's, that's part of what we're talking about here.
That's exactly it. But that's why, here's the other thing too, is that if, you have a good workplace and you have people are going to want to work for you. They're going to want to work hard for you, right? If you've got somebody coming to work that's worried about bills and all that and putting, I understand that, but if they're stressed out to the point where they're making the job dangerous because you're not, you're bullying people or not getting them into help, well, that doesn't make it, any better for anybody, right? You're creating an unsafe situation for everybody. Now, these are extreme things we're talking about, right? But this does happen in the industry. Like, the reason the suicide rate is 5 times the national average isn't a joke. I mean, it is, right? I mean, those are big numbers. So, if you're out there and there's a difference between two, we're gonna bust on our buddies. We're gonna have fun.
Yeah, of course.
But let somebody know that you're joking, right? Like, there's a thing, but there's a difference between being, busting on somebody because it's one of your boys or whatever, and you're just having fun. But make sure it doesn't go too far.
Yeah, and you know what? People aren't stupid either. I mean, you know when someone's, when a good buddy's you grinding your gears and you're laughing and it's fun, you're yucking it up, and you know when somebody when it's not a joke. People can sense that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean you're walking on eggshells, but just check in with your buddies. Hey, yeah, we BS around and I say some stuff and
Yeah.
we get on each other. But hey, if you're not okay or things aren't, let me know. We'll get you some help or whatever because we all have struggles, right? Like just be that good guy. Be that guy that can bust on his buddies, but that can also be the guy that you're the first person that they're gonna come
Yeah.
talk to, right? Like you
Yeah.
can still have fun with your buddies and right, like that's the thing is like we're in a politically correct society now and all that, and it's great, and but it's like there's a point where
Is it?
yeah, we're just having fun with our boys, right? We're just having
Yeah.
just be a buddy, but also be that person that person knows. Hey, you're just joking around, and if there's something goes down or something's wrong, this person's got your back. You can come talk to me, right? Like
Yeah.
I can still bust with my buddies and still have a good time, but they can also still come to me and say, hey, you know. I'm struggling. My marriage is struggling. All right. Well, let's go talk. Let's have a coffee. Right. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's see what we can do. Just that's all you have to be. You don't have to.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm not qualified to treat anybody, but I can listen. I can be a good friend. I can refer, to somebody. I can still have a good time with my buddies, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like I say, we have to put a dent in these numbers because like I said, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. 3 or 4 suicides are male.
Yeah, man, that is a sad statistic, and yeah, I keep thinking, we keep talking about buddies and friends, and it just makes me think like the quality of your life is so defined by the quality of your friendships, right? And like it takes work to be a good friend, but like I would want to be that kind of person. Like, hey, you come talk to me if something's, that's an honor to have to be able to listen to somebody's that they trust you enough. Like, what an honor that is. And you don't have to like have all the right words or like it's gonna be a little bit awkward, but who cares? What an honor that they would come to you and trust you enough like to tell you that. That's it.
And then sometimes too, we have to get in other people's business. Like we always don't want to get in our buddy's business. And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when it comes to a point where you see something where, maybe
Right.
somebody's, you know, using to excess or drinking to excess or whatever, it's time to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a mean conversation, but it's time to check in with that person, right? Like, and we're always worried about, hey, I don't want to get in my buddy's business or whatever, right? like and no, if it's bad enough, right, it's time to have a conversation. And it doesn't have to be as men, we always think it's got to be like a hockey coach to a player or whatever, where it gets kind of a little bit heated. No, it's just checking in and just saying, hey, buddy, I'm get in their business, right? If you have to, and just let them know that if they need you, they can talk to you, right? If say you notice that they're drinking a little too much or they're using a little too much or whatever, hey, you want to talk about that, right? That's where we're going to be able to help people.
Yeah, no, that's such good advice, man. I think, those of us who have been there, or if it's drinking too much or there's drugs involved, there's mental health, often those things are intertwined, right? I mean, that's why they're drinking because and they don't maybe even know. And sometimes you don't see the behavior. You don't really notice the behavior when you're doing those things. So if someone's going to call you out on it, who cares enough about you to call you out on it, then it's like, oh, you snap too. And you kind of like, yeah, he's right. I really needed someone to point that out.
Yeah, and you can still be a good friend. You can still bust on your body, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, like we stop looking the other way when somebody's like, it's like the shame and the guilt, right? It's just uh, like when I talk about Hastings here in Vancouver, we look by it and we go by it, and it's not just another addict or another junkie or another alcoholic or whatever. Something traumatic has happened to these people. That's why they're on Hastings, right? They didn't grow up and go, oh, like I think I want to be homeless and addicted to something, right? Like they all wanted to be hockey players, doctors, lawyers too. Something traumatic has happened in these people's lives, and we need to stop shaming them from getting help, right? Or what's happened to them. We need to encourage people to get help. And if you've got a buddy that's drinking or using, something probably is going on, right? Like that's why it's important to have that conversation and just be somebody that's open, and they might not come to you right away or whatever, but you just got to stay in there. You just got to keep letting that person know that, and eventually they will come to you,
Yeah, when
right?
they're ready. Yeah,
When
yeah,
they're ready, right? It might not be on your time, but at least get in their business enough to let them know that, hey, look, I see what's going on here. You're not fooling anybody, but I care about you. And that, I care enough. Let's get you some help if you need it. If you need it, I'm here. Right. So, and that's those are the little things we can do as buddies, right? That we can do to kind of encourage people to get help, because there's nothing wrong with getting help, right? Like my parents' generation were that generation where you sucked it up and you just, you
yeah.
know, and how were they as parents, right? Like, I mean, it didn't go well. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I love my
Come
dad
on.
and I know my dad loves me and all that, but I mean, there's no real kind of relationship in the sense of communication. And
Yeah.
I would love that with my dad, like we all would, right? But
Right.
that's what that generation learned, and now we're all kind of like trying to fix that, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of, and again, I'm not talking about like mushy stuff or anything. There's a time and a place, but just having that relationship with a friend that's like, fuck, I need some help, man. All right, well, let's go find you some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go get it better. And if it doesn't work the first time, that's all right. We'll find you help the second time, and the third time, whatever it takes. Now that's all you got to be. That's all it is. That's all it is. You don't.
Yeah. As you say that, I'm just thinking to myself, like, hey, listen, like, you're spending so much of your time being vulnerable and helping people with your courage, and like, I've struggled myself. I mean, I'm just another guy, another dude who worked. I worked in construction and I've done different things, but yeah, I've had lots of struggles with anxiety and depression, and so many people do, and I've learned to, I need help with so many things, man. Like, I mean, the day goes by though, I don't, but I think once you learn to ask for help, it's humbling. It kind of makes you a better person, and you can understand, like, I was never meant to carry the weight of the world. Like, I need help with like all kinds of things this weekend and today, and like, just like, I need people in my life who can help me out with these things, and that's okay. Like, that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do, is like, we're all here to help each other. And I do think that's one of the hardest things for, and we keep coming back, talking about men, and well, we are men, so I'm going to talk about from the point of view of a man. So I'm saying, like, I think one of the hardest things for a man to do is say help. That's a hard thing to do. It's not going to be easy. It just is hard, because we do have healthy pride, and we have we need to feel like we're providers, and that we can be successful at what we're doing, and we can put our mind to something, and we can protect, people that we love, and all those things. And when we can't do those things, it's really hard to admit, we're not doing so well. And a lot of times it's not even our fault. It's like, it's not everything is your fault. Like, so yeah.
I'd rather, like, I'm to the point now. I struggle too. Like, I'm still, like, in the sense that, like, I'll be like, I'm not gonna ask for help with this or whatever or that, or I can get it. And then eventually I'm like, I gotta need some help. So I'll talk to one of my and see if somebody, whatever, and with whatever I've got going on. Because I sit there and I think, well, okay, well, would I rather just sit here and suffer through it? Well, why? Well, does that what is that going to do? It's going to cause more destruction behind me because missed a meeting, or I haven't been as great a parent or a spouse as I can be. Like, why am I doing that? Why not just go get the help so that it's the
Well, yeah, you're doing it for the people that you love, right? It's almost like you're going to war with these demons, or with these things in your life that you need to fix. You're doing it because you love what's behind you, not necessarily because you love having to do that. Why else would you do it if not for the people in your life that you love? Yeah.
And it's a lot of, like I said, it's the distraction behind me that I created by missing meetings and not being as good of a getting in an argument that I didn't need to get into.
Right. And then the cycle would just continue, right? Because then it's like guilt, shame, I wish I didn't do that, say that. Why am I doing that? And then it's just like repetitive, and then it just keeps getting more darker and darker. Yeah.
Go get the help, man. And no, there's no magic bullet, and but you got to do the self work, of course. But man, it's so much better, like it's so much better when you do. And you're also an example for your kids, right? Like my kids know to go get help if they struggle, because they are going to struggle, right? We all do at some point. But I've set the example that it's okay to go get help, and they're going to follow that example, right? Instead of, if I suffer in silence and I just sit there and I do nothing about it and become more and more just whatever, then that's what my kids see, right? And kids are monkey see, monkey do. So then all of a sudden you're just passing on that generation of getting help. Why do that to your kids?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, kids are like that, right? And it does have a lot to do with their development. You mentioned like our parents grew up in a different time and the baby boomer era, and we're all kind of, although we like to say that we're not, we are products of the culture and a lot of different things that happen in the world, and so by talking the way you are, especially with your background, in the NHL. And it's one thing talking to another adult, but to a kid, man, like an NHL player who's got an Olympic medal and a Stanley Cup, like you're like this huge thing, right? And like if you can admit these things, like that's probably where you make the most difference. Because then 10 years later, when these kids are 19 or 20, maybe they're going through something then, like it was talked about when they were 7 or 8 or 9, right? Like it was, and somebody they really looked up to, like they couldn't think of what it meant more to be in their eyes like a hero, or man, like that somebody who's achieved all that in a tough sport like that. And so that's probably the biggest difference. And the return is like, you'll see the fruits of that like over time by just it's that kind of era, or that group of kids that are growing up now in a time where it's talked about, right?
Well, and it's not just me. Like there's a lot of professional athletes, out there like that have struggled. Kevin Love, NBA All-Star, he had a panic attack on the court in front of 20,000 people. He's NBA All-Star, right? And now he goes and talks about it. And you guys, everybody else probably knows, Paul Bissonnette from Spit and Chicklets. Like Paul's a good friend of mine, and when he was 17, one of his best friends took his own life. Like people don't know that stuff, but it's like we've all got struggles. We've all been through it. You're not alone. So I don't understand the mentality of that we approach these things alone, because there isn't a person out there, and if there's a hell of a lot more of us that have struggled through something than people that haven't, right? I mean, if you've made it this far unscathed in your life, well, congratulations, because you are one of the rare few, right? Like we've all got shit.
I think that's a red flag that this person isn't trustworthy if they got to that point in their life and haven't gotten through anything.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Nothing's ever happened. No,
yeah, okay.
Bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. Talk about your book, Corey. Saving My Life came out in October 2022. Had you been thinking about writing a book for a long time? Was it something that like maybe your spouse or someone in your close circle of friends said, hey, you should write a book? Or was that like always part of the plan as you started public speaking and that kind of thing?
Yeah, usually, so writing a book, that was the first kind of idea. And then the Players Tribune article came out, and the Players Tribune article hit quick. It was 2 million hits in under an hour. It went viral. So it was the right way to go, because getting like an online publication like that, everybody can read it quickly. And it hit really hard. And it's a Players Tribune. It's called Dark, Dark, Dark. Whereas a book takes a lot more time, right? To write. Someone's got to open it and read it. Not everybody, like I can't remember the last time I finished reading a book.
Yeah. Would you say that process for you though was like, I don't know if it's like too deep, but was that a healing for you to kind of do that?
Yeah. I people have asked me that. I'd say no. I think what's been healing is getting out and honestly, what's been healing is being public about my story.
Yeah.
Because when you walk around and you feel like you're hiding something,
sick as their secrets.
Yes, exactly. You hit it right on the head there. So just it's healing in the sense that I don't have any more secrets. Like I'm not hiding. I struggle. If I'm late for something, well, maybe it's because I'm struggling or whatever. Like there's no secrets. When I was really sick and I wasn't telling anybody, when I'd be late for a meeting because I struggled getting out of bed or I was suicidal. Well, it made me look like a bad teammate, right? And a bad kind of guy because, well, who missed a meeting or whatever. You're late for work all the time, right? When really you're struggling. And then what happens is people will put a reason on top of why you're late for these meetings
Yeah, yeah.
because you don't give a shit
Because you don't care. Yeah,
or this or
yeah,
that when it's the furthest from the truth. So when I started opening up and talking about my stuff, you know, I, obviously being having pride of being on time for work, but it also is this is why. Right now, I'm a good person. I'm not that asshole you think I am. I'm just struggling. Right, like
yeah.
when you have secrets, as you just said, you're only see it's toxic. Like secrets are toxic, and people make up their own assumptions. Now, does that mean everybody needs to know your own business? No,
No,
but
not everybody deserves. Yeah, exactly,
yeah, but
exactly.
but it's but you know what? When you let people know, hey, I'm struggling, they have a lot more compassion and empathy than not knowing at all, right? Or just
Mhm.
thinking you don't care. And communication is so important. So the book, was it healing to write? I would say it was more. I was way beyond that part. Like the healing had already kind of happened, and I was ready
Yeah,
to write a book. The book is more for other people. It's not for me because it's more of a mental health book than a sports book. It got put in a sports category, but it's a mental health book with sports stories, not a sports book with mental health stories. Like
right,
that's
right.
if you need want to read something out there that can explain mental health and what it's like to have it, the book has been outstanding for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, and people can find that, I'm sure, in any bookstore online. Check out your website and that kind of stuff. If anyone wants to find that
Yeah,
book.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And it's gone really well. And then, like I said, the speaking's gone well, and it's been awesome. It's been awesome. And that when you change your attitude too, from like when I was a hockey player, it's all about me. Now it's all about helping other people. Like, man, you get it back tenfold. You really do. Like that's what it's all about. And this has been really cool. So thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
yeah. No, it's been a real pleasure to connect with you and talk to you about all these all these things that we still have to continue to advocate for and have these conversations. And yeah, I just hope that within our audience, I hope there's people that are listening that are struggling a little bit, and no doubt they are. I mean, like you said, I think 1 in 4 men struggle with mental health at any given time. So hopefully it just even if just hearing you talk will help, right? It's going to help them. So
And as men, we want to solve our problems on our own. But I didn't get to the NHL because I decided to just do it all on my own. I had coaches, right?
mhm.
That helped me along the way, taught me how to be an NHL goalie. It's the same as a human being, right? Like
Yeah,
you don't just know everything because you're on. I'm here. I'm alive. I know
yeah,
other people use other people just like I had a coach to get better mental health too. Right? It's
yeah.
the same thing. You don't have to sit there and suffer and do it all on your own. Like you should have the answers. I don't have the answers for what's going on in my brain, right? I needed someone else to teach me how to deal with that stuff so that I can be better today. Sitting here trying to figure it out on my own is just suffering, and it's just what's just banging my head against the wall, right? No, use the resources around you. There's people that have studied this stuff,
Hmm.
right? Studied depression, studied anxiety. Like
Hmm.
they're the ones that know how to help you get out of it, right? Use
Yeah,
it. It's
absolutely.
ridiculous to think that we can do it on our own all the time.
Absolutely. And before we close, Corey, I don't want to, bombard you with a bunch of hockey questions. I know you get that all the time, and I could certainly sit here and talk hockey with you all day. We were talking about the Canucks earlier, and obviously that's your team living locally there in Vancouver. But I wonder if you could just share your thoughts before we close out on, you were a goaltender. Um, in professional hockey, and that's a unique position, right? It's you're obviously you're all on the same team, but you've got kind of a specific role. But when it comes to like your experience with the Stanley Cup winning team with the Rangers in '94 and having the Memorial Cup win in '92 with Kamloops Blazers, Olympic silver medal, just your thoughts on like teamwork, and like what made those teams special? I mean, it's kind of sounds cliche, I know, but like, and there's going to be leadership, and like skill and all that stuff, but like just you live that in your experience when you look back. What were the dressing rooms like? I mean, who?
Yeah, I played with Mark Messier, so I was there when Mess won the cup with the Rangers and all that. And I would say, the biggest thing that that I learned from that is know your role, because everybody has a role, in a certain situation. And we all want to be champions. We all want to be the owners and the CEOs of these companies. Your best chance of success is to know what your role is within that company and do it to the best of your ability. And then from there you can move into another role, right? Like there's nothing that will tear down an organization or a team quicker than somebody that, isn't doing their job well because they think that they should be doing something else, or they're bitching about what the owners did here or what they did there, or what, when everybody falls in line and the projects get done and everything gets done and everyone plays their role, that's how success happens. And then success breeds success, right? So, if you do a good job, well, you're going to move up the company ladder if you do your role. If you want to be one of those people that are always complaining or hate life or whatever, and the job's not always great, let's be honest, right? But that's how success breeds success. That's kind of what I learned in those situations with those guys, is that when everybody falls into their role, success happens. And when success happens, you're going to be successful. Those are probably the biggest things that I learned. And I asked Mark Messier once, I said to him, in Edmonton, they signed a bunch of these contracts for like $75,000 for like 10 years in the 80s. And I asked him why. And he said back then it was a job. Hockey was just a job. That's what that's what you did. So you just got comfortable. And then everything started to change. Money started to come in and all that, and salary cap, and the game got bigger. And I asked him, what he thought of success and teams and all that. And he said to me, I can complain about who the owners are doing, who's trading what or whatever. He said, but it's not my team. When it's my team and it's my job and I own it, okay, well, then I can start to make decisions. But for him, he said, it's my job to fall in line and do the best job that I can be. So if he was the captain, which he was, he didn't worry about trades or, what the owners were spending money on. His job was to trust in the organization and to make sure that he was the captain, the best captain that he could be. And that's, that's basically kind of like the best way I could describe the conversation I had with him, which again means staying within your role, and success breeds success, right? So that's kind of the best way I can describe what the question you asked me. I hope I answered it.
I love it, man. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for your time today, Corey. It's been a pleasure talking with you, man. Really.
No, thank you, and thanks for anything you guys need anytime. I'm around. Appreciate it.
Cheers.